Our first reading is taken from the Gospel of Matthew. In this reading, we will see the Lord's passion on the cross and his resurrection. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Then behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to the bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. So when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." And many women who followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, were there looking on from afar. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. His countenance was lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. And the guards shook for fear of him, and became like dead men. But the angel answered and said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen. As he said, come and see the place where the Lord lay." Our second reading is taken from Arcana 96-70. The tearing of the veil of the temple into two parts when the Lord endured the cross was a sign of the glorification of the Lord. For when the Lord was in the world, he made human, he had assumed divine truth. But when he left the world, he made his human divine good, from which divine truth has since emanated. See the places referred to at the ends of these passages, divine good being meant by the Holy of Holies. Amen. We celebrate the Lord's resurrection this morning with joy and delight. The Lord who went through trials and at the end the passion on the cross, and he is resurrected on this day. So we came into sanctuary in a floral procession with joy and delight. But on the same Easter morning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to the tomb where the Lord was buried with much sadness. The last time they witnessed the Lord when the Lord was crucified. So these women carried that heavy-hearted feelings with them, and they came to see the Lord, to do their last ritual for the Lord. They brought in some oil and fragrant spices. But their sadness, their sorrow turned to be a surprise and fear, because at the time an angel of the Lord was coming down from heaven, and he rolled away the stone and rock that blocked entrance of the cave, which was the tomb, and he was sitting on that. And the women became very scared. And the guards who were watching the tomb there, they became like a dead man from their fear. Then we may wonder why we are so happy this morning, why we are so delighted in this morning. Because we know that the Lord is the living God, and He overcomes the power of the hell, and He overcame the death, and He became the only one God in heaven and earth. And even He at the end declared, all the authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Lo, I am with you, the end of the age. So the Lord became glorified. He became one with the Father, and then He is with us. That's why we are very delightful and happy this morning. But if we look at a few incidents we read in the reading this morning, we can be more clarified what's the joy and delight, what's the cause of that joy and delight we feel, we sense this morning. We'd like to pay attention to two incidents. The first of them is the veil of the temple. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. And the second incident was many dead bodies of saints, and they were coming out, they were raised from their death, and they entered the holy city, Jerusalem, when the Lord was resurrected. While the Lord was on earth, He had two very different states. The first state was like just us. So He ate with His disciples. He enjoyed wine sometimes. And also sometimes He became very emotional. So He really wept when He heard about Lazarus' death. And sometimes the Lord became fearful, just like us. When He was praying to the Father in the Garden of Gethsemane, He knew what's happening to Him on that night. And in the next few days, He will be arrested, He will be tortured, He will be crucified. So the Lord became very fearful. He asked His disciples to be with Him. So the Lord had the human state, we call it exinanition, in another term, being emptied out. But the Lord was very different from us sometimes. Like He even raised dead Lazarus. And even the Lord could walk on the sea without sinking down. And even the Lord could quiet down the stormy sea. And the Lord could feed 5,000 men with just a little food. So in that time, the Lord was united with the Father. And He was called at that time the Son of God instead of Son of Man. And at that time, the Father and the Son are one. And the Lord could perform these amazing miracles. So the Lord had two different states. One state just like us, the other one is like purely divine. But we know that glorification means these two different states, fatherly state and maybe son's state, are united. So that is represented by the curtain and the veil of the temple, which was torn. We know that in the temple and also in the tabernacle which Moses established, there were kind of veils everywhere, because the veils served as like a doors and dividers. Especially they put it before the entrance of the tabernacle. So it divided the courtyard and the holy place. And also this veil was placed between the Holy of Holies and holy place. So these two different places, holy place and the Holy of Holy, has a symbolic meanings. Holy place is more like a spiritual state, spiritual place, and Holy of Holies, where we keep the most important item, the Ark of the Covenant. And that two places were divided by the veil. So holy place means our spiritual state and the Lord's divine truth and the Lord's Son's state. But Holy of Holies represents more than celestial, more than spiritual. The celestial is meant by Holy of Holies and divine goodness and the Father rather than the Son. So when you think about the veil between which blocks holy place and Holy of Holies, that is meant by the Lord's glorification, and which means now the Lord combined the two different states into one. Now not anymore Father and Son, now divine human, only one God in heaven and earth. That's why the Lord could say, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Are you thinking of that veil there? Don't think about it. And in this way, the Lord clearly presented who He is. Now, all that barrier, all that distinction, and all that dividing things are removed. Now the Lord became only one God, and He removed all human qualities which He received from Mary. And after this, an earthquake followed the torn veil, and earthquake represents the dramatic change. So after this incident, dramatic change took place in the church, in the world, and the whole universe. Now the Lord is glorified. Now the Lord is resurrected. And at that time, many dead bodies of good people were raised. And they were coming out. They walked out of their tombs. And when the Lord was resurrected, these people entered into Jerusalem, holy city. This is very meaningful for us, and perhaps it may give us the deepest joy, because before the Lord's coming to the world, there was only one heaven which was only for celestial people. And we know that we are spiritual people, and which means we didn't have a place to go. We didn't have an eternal place. So those spiritual people were kept under heaven by the Lord. And the Lord, when He had to come, He went through temptations and trials. And when He was glorified, the Lord formed a heaven for spiritual people, just like us. So that image was shown. Those dead bodies were raised, and they could enter into holy temple because the Lord raised them. So perhaps that's the joy and delight we feel this morning. The Lord is glorified, and our salvation has been possible due to He made a new way, and He made a heaven for us, and then He could invite us to our eternal home. We need to participate in the Lord's resurrection. How come? Is it possible? Perhaps we have to die first, but our regeneration is our resurrection. And think about when we divide our mind like internal and external. We have more love to the Lord and love to the neighbor in our higher mind, in our internal mind. And we have love of the self and love of the world in the external mind. When that division is removed, We are united, internal and external, but higher mind should be reigning over us. So that's the state of regeneration. That's the definition of regeneration. Our love to the Lord and our love to the neighbor are reigning in us over our love of the self and love of the world. That's the resurrection to us. So when we are regenerated, we are resurrected on the earth. And when we enter the other world, we will go into the Lord's kingdom, the Lord's heaven, which the Lord has formed, has prepared when He finished His resurrection. This is the reason why we are so happy and delighted this morning. And we are truly happy. We read, He is not here, but is risen. Amen.